He's walking around. We're both walking around in ways that are normal ways of walking. I was like, honey, yeah, sure, you feeling all right? Whatever, like,
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Oh, sorry. Fixing the podium or the lectern. I know. It matters. I know it does. I know. Okay. So on Monday afternoon, President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden will travel to the U.S. Coast Guard sector, New York, for a Friendsgiving dinner with the service members and military families as part of the First Lady's Joining Forces initiative to support military families. This year's dinner, hosted by the Robert Irvine Foundation, will be prepared by Chef Robert Irvine and his team. The U.S. Coast Guard sector, New York, is home to over 500 active duty members and their family members and represents the largest military presence in New York City. During their visit, the President and the First Lady will thank service members and their families and help serve Thanksgiving meal. This is an annual tradition that is very special to the President and the First Lady. They look forward to yet another Friendsgiving dinner with some of the men and women who serve our country and their families who sacrifice so much for our communities. And on a related note, as Americans prepare for Thanksgiving, there's one more thing to be thankful for: much needed relief at the grocery store and the gas pump. For the second year in a row, the average cost of a Thanksgiving meal is falling, and many grocery chains are offering deals for the holiday. According to the American Farm Bureau, the average price of the typical Thanksgiving dinner fell 5%, with turkey prices down 6%. And as more Americans are getting ready to travel to see family members and loved ones, the price of gas has fallen to its lowest point in more than 3 years. Prices at the pump are down about 25 cents per gallon compared to this time last year, and below $3 per gallon in almost 30 states. There's more to do, and we're fighting to further lower costs and grow the middle class. President Biden will continue to use every tool available to help American families put food on the table and keep money in their pockets. And as you all know, the first week of December, the president will travel to Angola, where he will meet with President Lorenzo, recognize Angola's role as a regional leader, and underscore the true transformation of U.S.-Angola relationship. Together, the United States and Angola are working to address a full spectrum of pressing challenges, from narrowing the infrastructure gap in Africa and growing economic opportunities and sustainable development in the region, to expanding technologies and scientific cooperation, bolstering peace and security, strengthening food security, and among others. While there, he will also meet with African and private sector leaders and reaffirm U.S. partnership across a host of high priority issues, including security, health, and the economy. As you all know well, President Biden has made revitalizing our international alliances and partnerships a key priority, recognizing that today's challenges require global perspectives and collective responses. The visit reflects his promise to visit the continent during his term, which he made at the U.S. Africa Leaders Summit, and we will have more to share in the days ahead. With that, Colleen, it's good to see you. I feel like it's been a while.
Corinne, can you talk about the decision to loosen restrictions on long-range weapons for Ukraine?
So just a couple of things there that I do want to add is I want to be really clear. I'm not going to get into specifics about Ukraine's operation, from the podium today. That is not something that we're going to do, and that's not something we normally do. What I will say is something I'll just reflect on something that the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, said earlier this week, which was the major escalation we're seeing is that Russia has gone to another country from another part of the world. North Korea brought in thousands of their troops to the front lines and have added them into this war. This is a significant change and one that we warned the Russians about before they did it. We continue to talk to our allies and partners about this, and as it relates to any operations on the ground, this is something for the Ukrainians to speak to directly.
Just staying on Ukraine for a second, with regard to escalation, is there concern that Putin changing Russia's nuclear rules is sort of suggesting that the president's initial instincts on allowing long-range missiles further into Russia could amount to a dangerous escalation of the war?
I mean, look,
This
this
is
is
right. Was it right?
And just to kind of reiterate what the National Security Advisor said, right? And you've heard this from other members of the NSC team, which is the escalation at every turn, at every step is coming from Russia. They're the ones who are escalating this. They're the ones who started this war. It is because of their aggression into a sovereign territory, Ukraine. And this war can end today. You hear say this over and over again. It can, if Russia would stop the war and stop what they're doing with their aggression. So this is an aggression from their side, and we've been very clear about that. You just heard me lay out a couple things that the National Security Advisor said just earlier this week. What they're doing, thousands of troops from another country that is now part of what Russia's doing with their aggression into Ukraine. So this is their aggression, not Ukraine's, not ours.
To follow up here, for a long time, the White House argued that using these long-range tactical missiles into Russia to attack targets inside Russia would escalate the war, would really invite retaliation. So why now? Why change the policy now?
I'm not going to get into specifics. I'm just not going to get into specific about Ukraine's operations. Not something that I'm going to do today. But I want to be really clear.
I guess I'm asking about the specifics of the White House's decision to change policy.
I'm just telling you that I'm not going to get into specifics from here from the podium. I'm going to be very clear about that. And what I have said is, when you're thinking about bringing in thousands of troops to the front lines to add to the war, right? These are North Korean troops, as you know. That is the aggression from Russia's part. That's their aggression. And we're going to continue to be there for Ukraine. This is a president that has led on making sure Ukraine has what it needs in the battlefield. He's the one that rallied countries, more than 50 countries, to make sure that Ukraine got what it needed. But when we're talking about aggression here, or we're talking about escalation, pardon me, more so escalation, this is Russia's the one who's been escalating every step of the way here.
And so if I'm hearing you right, it was that escalation, the North Korean troops.
I wouldn't,
that was
no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I'm not going to get into specifics about Ukraine's operations from the podium today. You asked me about escalation, and I'm being very clear where the escalation is coming from, but I'm not going to get into specifics.
2 more months left of this administration. Yeah. Are there new goals or definite goals that the president has in how to support Ukraine in these final 2 months? Realistically, what difference can he make in these last 2 months of his term?
I mean, look, I think the president has made a whole lot of difference. Let's not forget, as before Russia invaded into Ukraine, the president was the one that warned about that happening. He was the one, and we were able to share that information with Ukraine. He's the one that made sure that NATO was stronger, the NATO alliance was strengthened. He led that effort. He was the one that helped rally more than 50 countries to get back to Ukraine. Let's not forget, and you all reported this, within days, we were hearing over and over again, within days, Kyiv would fall. We're hearing that over and over again. And today, because, yes, of this president and what he's been able to do, but also the bravery of the Ukrainians, they continue to fight. They continue to fight on. And so the president in September, as you all know, we've talked about this from the podium, talked about surging the security assistance. We made an announcement yesterday. about the kind of the next assistance that we were providing, and we're going to continue to do that, surge that assistance, make sure that Ukrainians have what they need on the battlefield to push back against Russia's aggression. Okay, Nancy.
Thanks. A couple questions about that aggression. Has
Yeah.
the U.S. determined that Russia used a ballistic weapon last night in retaliation for the U.S. authorizing the use of ATACMS by the Ukrainian government?
So a couple of things. So obviously we are aware of Russia's launch of an intermediate range ballistic missile against Ukraine. Ukraine has withstood countless attacks from Russia. We have seen that repeatedly over the past more than 2 years now. We briefed Ukraine and our close allies, partners in recent days to help them prepare. As the president announced earlier this year, the United States is providing Ukraine with hundreds of additional Patriot and AMRAAMS missiles to strengthen its air defense. Many of these are air defense missiles have been delivered already as a consequence of that president's decisions to divert air defense exports to Ukraine, and deliveries of additional air defense missiles to Ukraine are ongoing. And as I just stated, the president in September, on September 29th to be more exact, he talked about surging continued assistance, security assistance to Ukraine. And so we're going to continue to do that. And that is going to make sure they're strengthening their capabilities, including air defense, and put Ukraine in the best possible position on the battlefield. And just yesterday, as I mentioned moments ago, we were able to announce another security assistance. And so that's going to continue. And so we will not be deterred here. We are going to continue to make sure that Ukrainians have what they need on the ground.
Now that Russia says it is changing its nuclear doctrine to essentially lower the bar for when it can use nuclear weapons, does the U.S. need to change its nuclear posture as well?
So let's not forget, we said earlier this month that we were not surprised by Russia's announcement that it would update its nuclear doctrine. And so Russia has been signaling its attempt to update its doctrine for several weeks, and observing no changes to Russia's nuclear posture. We have not seen any reason to adjust our own nuclear posture or doctrine in response to Russia's statements. So this is more of the same irresponsible rhetoric that we continue to hear from Russia, which we have seen for the past more 2 years now, if you think about their aggression, their war against Ukraine. And so, and I've talked about it a little bit moments ago about the use of DPRK soldiers in combat operations against Ukraine. It presents a significant escalation of its war. Again, they are the ones, they, meaning Russia, are the ones that are escalating this war. And so we are not going to be deterred here. We're going to continue. We're going to certainly continue to be there for the brave people of Ukraine.
Have U.S. officials been able to determine what Russia is giving North Korea in exchange for North Korean soldiers fighting in this war?
So I'm not going to certainly get into specifics on that. What I can say is what we have been very clear about is our determination to be very clear here about our continued support for certainly for the Ukrainian people as they continue to deal with this aggression, this escalation from Russia. And so we have said that we're certainly concerned about Russia's decisions. We see it as it being born out of desperation, what they're doing, and it's born out of desperation because they now are seeing high casualties, right? The Russians are, and so now what they're doing is they're turning to DPRK to supply them soldiers to continue their brutal war against Ukraine. And so, look, it's not going to deter us. They're the ones escalating. We're going to continue to provide support to the Ukrainians as they continue to push back against Russia's aggression. That is not going to stop us from doing that. Okay.
Does the White House have any reaction to Matt Gaetz withdrawing his name for consideration to be the next Attorney General?
So what I'll say is, and we've been pretty steadfast on being consistent here, not going to comment on every personnel matter or all personnel matters here that the president-elect is deciding or is nominating people for at these respective agencies. We really, truly want to respect the transfer of power. We want it to be efficient. We want it to happen in a way that the American people deserve. And that's what we've been trying to do. We believe that is very much part of our democratic principle. And that's what you're seeing this president do, and lead by example. More broadly, as we talk about the Department of Justice more broadly, look, the president has said when it comes to investigation, that department should be independent. There should be no partisanship. There should be no loyalty to one party or the other. The loyalty should be to the Constitution, and the loyalty should be to the rule of law. And that is something I believe, and we believe, the president has led also on that particular issue by example.
And then on that topic, our understanding is that the Trump transition team hasn't signed the MOUs that are outstanding still. Is there any update that you can provide on your end? Any progress there? Or is there concern now about how that may impede some of that transfer of power you're talking to?
Yeah, and so, and look, as you know, President Biden met with the president-elect to show that transition of power, and obviously offering any assistance needed to make sure that happens in a way that is peaceful, obviously, and efficient. And so that was one part of it. Our teams continue to stay in touch. As of now, to your point, the Trump-Vance transition team has not yet entered into the agreements with the White House and the General Service Administration. As you know, the Chief of Staff, Jeff Zients here, has reached out to the co-chairs and have consistently reiterated the wanting to work together and making sure that they have what they need. So we're going to continue to engage with the Trump transition team to ensure that we do have that efficient, effective transition of power. And in those conversations, we certainly are stressing that the White House and the administration stand ready to provide assistance and that access to services and information certainly outlined in the GSA and the White House Memorandum of Agreement, those MOUs. So those conversations continue, and we want this to go smoothly, and that's what we're trying to get to.
And just finally, what is the White House view on Speaker Johnson saying that he will bar transgender women from using Capitol bathrooms as something that Congresswoman Nancy Mace has clearly raised in regards to Representative-elect Sarah McBride?
So I would, when I think about that question, I think about what the Congresswoman-elect said, and who, as you know, the president has a close relationship with and is very proud of her. And what she said is, I'm not here to fight about bathrooms. I'm here to fight for Delawareans and to bring down costs facing families. And we agree with her. We think that's incredibly important to focus on the American people. Obviously, for her, it's the Delawareans who she represents. And so, again, the president is proud of her. I'm not going to add to that.
Has he called her in recent
I
days?
don't have a conversation to speak to. As you know, they had a moment to speak on the night of the election. He was able to call her and congratulate her. I don't have anything else to add, but I think her words speak volumes.
Thanks, Green. U.S. prosecutors charged Indian billionaire Gautam Adani over his role in an alleged bribery scheme this week. Is the administration concerned that this will damage U.S.-India relations, especially given the recent case with a former Indian intelligence official being charged in an assassination plot aimed at a U.S. citizen?
So obviously we're aware of these allegations, and I would have to refer you to the SEC and DOJ about the specifics of those allegations against the Adani group. What I will say is on the U.S. and India relationship, we believe that it's stands on an extremely strong foundation, anchored in ties between our people and cooperation across a full range of global issues. And so what we believe and we're confident about is that we'll continue to navigate this issue as we have with other issues that may have come up, as you just stated. And so the specifics of this is something that SEC and DOJ can speak to directly. But again, we believe that this relationship between India and the U.S. has been built on a strong foundation.
I wanted to ask you also about the ICC's issuing arrest warrants for several top officials, including Netanyahu, over Israel's conduct in this war. I know that the U.S. rejected this decision.
does the administration see this ruling as a threat to Israel's ability to defend itself? And also Republican Senator Lindsey Graham is calling for the Senate to sanction the ICC after this decision. Is that a measure that the White House would support?
Yeah,
or is
so
there-
a couple things. Let me just say, because this is the first time I've had an opportunity to speak to this at the podium. So let me just say more broadly that we fundamentally reject the court's decision to issue arrest warrants for senior Israel officials. We remain deeply concerned by the prosecutor's rush to seek arrest warrants and the troubling process errors that led to this decision. The United States has been clear that the ICC does not have jurisdiction over this matter. You've heard us say this before. Whatever this prosecutor might imply, there is no evidence, none, between Israel and Hamas. There's just none. In coordination with partners, including Israel, we are discussing certainly those next steps, but that's going to look like. And to your question about sanctions, that's basically kind of just answered it in that last part of what I said. We're in consultation with our partners and also which include Israel about our next steps. We fundamentally reject that the ICC has jurisdiction over the situation. And so that's something that we've been pretty clear about and will continue to do so. Okay, MJ.
At this point, with 2 months left in the administration, does the White House see a real value in President Biden directly engaging with members of the press?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Look, I think we have worked really hard, and I hope you all have seen this, to make sure that we brought back the norms that was taken away from our predecessor on how we engage with the press. The president respects the freedom of the press, and he actually enjoys engaging and going back and forth with all of you. And that is something, and he's done that extensively, and that is certainly something that he's going to continue to do. We have less than 60 days, I think you just said 2 months left. That is plenty of time for the president to continue that engagement. He will. This is something that we respect. Bringing back the norms, working with the White House Correspondents Association, making sure that we have that healthy back and forth with the press corps. And so we believe it is important when the president engages with the press. He's done, I believe, more than 50 interviews just this year alone. He's taken hundreds of questions in his back and forth with all of you, and that's going to continue.
If all of that is true, why on a 6-day foreign trip where the president obviously had a robust American press corps traveling with him, did he not have a single engagement, whether it is a press conference or maybe just speaking on the tarmac or really anywhere where he took questions from the press?
I mean, as you all just stated and wrote about, the G20 and APEC was his last opportunity to deal with some of these world leaders that he has built a close relationship with. Has some of them he's known certainly more than his almost 4 years in this office, and so he truly wanted to spend time engaging and listening, having that one-on-one engagement that the president believes in and trusts in. And so he wanted to spend time doing that. And so that's what you saw the president do. And I get it. I get that you all want to hear from the president. I get that. I understand that. And I'm not saying that you won't. You will. He will certainly continue to engage with all of you. And it is, when I say it's something that he actually enjoys doing, it is. He enjoys having the back and forth with all of you. And that's going to continue.
Just to be clear, you mean the explanation is that he, on this trip, was extra busy meeting with world leaders because this is one of his, last
what
big foreign-
I'm saying is, as you know, this was one of his last opportunities to speak to many of these leaders. There were 20 leaders at the G20, more than 21, or about 21 leaders at APEC. And so he wanted to spend that time certainly doing what he normally does at these conferences, obviously, but also, speaking directly to them as one of his final times as president. And again, putting that aside, I think your question was, do we believe that he should engage some version of that? I apologize if I'm not quoting you directly. Yeah, we think it's important for him to engage with the press. He thinks it's important to engage with the press, and that's going to continue. It is. You will hear from the president and have an opportunity to do those back and forths that you normally have done with them.
This is related but separate
Yeah,
from
sure.
just the trip itself. It's been more than 2 weeks since the election. This was an election that elected a man that President Biden has repeatedly referred to as an existential threat. So why is it that the American people have not heard President Biden talk about this threat since the election?
Because there was an election and the American people spoke.
Mhm.
The will of the American people were very clear, right? And so the president is now in a situation where we have to deal with a peaceful transfer of power. We have to respect the will of the American people. And that's what you have been seeing from this president, trying to lead by example to make sure that that happens. And that's what the American people deserve. That's what the president deserved. And that's what I think he was very clear about in Rose Garden when he delivered his remarks 2 days after the election. And he said, he was very honest. He said, these, and again, I'm not quoting him exactly, but these were not the results that we had wanted, right? And that's just being honest. They weren't. But we are now in a position where he believes he has to lead by example and show what a peaceful transfer of power looks like. And so that's what you're seeing from this president. And, to the points that you made, I've been asked about existential threat. I've been asked about threat to our democracy. The president is always going to be honest with the American people. He feels like he is obligated. What he said still stands. But we are now in a different place. We are. The American people spoke. They deserve a peaceful transfer of power. That's what this president wants to do.
Does he have a message for people on what they should do about this existential threat? Assuming that he still believes Donald Trump is an existential threat.
Look, his thoughts and what he said, his thinking on that has not changed. It has not. And I think he was very clear about what he believes should have been done or how we should move forward. How, he was very clear during those moments that he spoke about it. Right now, he wants to lead by example and talk and show the American people what it looks like to have an efficient, effective transfer of power. And he believes that is what the American people deserve. And I'm just going to leave it there for now. Okay, Joey.
Yeah, thanks, Corinne. President-elect Trump this week confirmed he intends to declare a national emergency and use U.S. military to pursue mass deportations of undocumented immigrants. Does the president believe this is an appropriate use of the military?
So look, I'm not going to go into what the state attorney general, or state elected leaders might do in the future as a response to this next administration's policy, how they're going to move forward. I'm not going to do that. What I can speak to is our administration is focused on arresting dangerous criminals and threats to public safety. We do not believe in separating families. And what I can speak to is what we have been able to do and how that has worked out, right? In our remaining time, we're going to continue to fight to secure our border. Since the administration took strong actions back in June, encounters have dropped by more than 55% and are lower than they were 4 years ago. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue to enforce our laws, remove individuals who do not have a legal basis to be here, to remain in the U.S. And we're going to do that while making sure we're treating people with dignity that they deserve.
With that said, does the president, though, have concerns about using the military to carry out, Trump's talked about these mass deportations.
I heard your question. You're
Yeah.
just repeating the question
That's
that you
true,
just
I
asked
do.
me. I hear that. I know, I hear you. I appreciate the effort. I don't want to get into what attorney generals or other elected officials might do in the future. What I'm going to stick to is what we're doing right now. And what we are going to continue to do in the next less than 60 days in this administration. Good, Karen.
Green. Yesterday, the president met with North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper to talk about the ongoing disaster recovery down there, and state and local officials were there as well. The administration this week, the president has asked Congress for about $100 billion for disaster relief, emergency disaster relief. How does the White House want to see that get done? Do you want to see that done quickly as a standalone bill, or later as tied up with the government funding that's likely expected later in December?
So what we want is Congress to act. We're going to continue to urge Congress to act quickly to pass a supplemental funding package to assist communities obviously impacted recent hurricanes and other disasters. And what we have seen and what we know when we've seen these types of previous natural disasters in the past, we've seen Congress come together in a bipartisan way to get that done, to help out communities in crisis. And so that's what we want to see. That's what we look forward to working with our congressional partners and delivering that for American people, for the folks again who are in crisis, who need that additional funding. And so obviously you saw the letter from OMB, and so certainly they can go into more details and specifics of the breakdown of our ask. But that's how we want to see it moving forward.
Would you say this is the top legislative priority right now for the president in this lame duck session?
So I think right after the election, I talked about 4 or 5 legislative priorities. Obviously, this was one of them. Getting our judicial, we think our very qualified judicial nominees through is a priority. The NDAA is a priority as well. So we have a couple of key priorities that we want to work with our congressional partners on getting through, and this is certainly one of them. And again, FEMA has the money to respond to Hurricanes Helene and Milton, and that's assuming there's no new large, obviously, hurricanes or natural disaster. But as you know, when it comes to SBA, that funding is fully exhausted, and you have, that type of funding is critical to businesses, homeowners, and renters, and they really rely on that funding, that SBA funding, to certainly deal with recovery and rebuilding. So there's a real need here, a real urgency, and so we're going to work with congressional members to get that done.
Did you hear a dire message yesterday from those North Carolina officials?
Look, I think they're trying to recover and rebuild. And I think that they were devastated by the hurricane, as we all know. I think some of you were able to come with us on that trip, whether if it was us or with the vice president, and you saw what they have to deal with here. Devastated by the hurricane. So I don't want to speak for North Carolina, but certainly there is an urgency. I would refer you to obviously the North Carolina Governor Cooper on this particular question, but we saw how devastated they were from this hurricane, and it is important. It doesn't matter if you're from this president. It doesn't matter if you're a red state, blue state, rural. If you're part of a rural America, urban America, all American people deserve to have the assistance that they need especially when a crisis like this occurs.
Thank you. Can you detail how the White House is thinking about clemency in these last 2 months? Is there a process for how those pardon decisions are going to be made? Is the president expecting to make any sort of statement with the pardons he does in the next 2 months?
So look, the president has certainly been committed to reforming the criminal justice system, and has done that through clemency authority in a manner that provides second chances, ensures equal justice under the law, and strengthens public safety. And so he's going to continue to elevate clemency petitions in a thoughtful and deliberate manner. I'm not going to get into specifics here on that process, but he's going to do this in a way that he believes is the right way to move forward. But I just don't have anything about the process and getting into the nitty-gritty of this. But I think you've seen how the president has treated this over the last almost 4 years.
I have a question about Venezuela, but first on Brazil, the federal police have just indicted former President Jair Bolsonaro for an attempt coup d'etat after he lost the elections in 2022.
Yeah.
Does the U.S. do you have a reaction from this? And did the president discuss this when he met with President Lula da Silva?
So I have not spoken to our teams about this, so I would have to connect with them. I don't have a response. I want to make sure I give you the right response. I don't have a response. And also we can talk about this after the briefing. What's your next question?
Venezuela, the U.S. recently called for the first time President-elect, the opposition leader Edmundo González. And I was curious a little bit about the timing, if it has something to do with the inauguration in Venezuela, it's January 10th. What message is the U.S. trying to send with this?
So I will say since July, it has been clear to us, the United States, to democratic nations around the world, and to independent international organizations that observed the July 28th elections, that opposition candidate Edmundo Urrutia won the most votes. And we said this repeatedly. You've heard me say it a couple times at the podium. And so we've been pretty consistent about that. Winning the most votes makes him what? The president-elect. And so that's what we believe. It does not change our position at all. We, the United States, currently recognize the democratically elected 2015 National Assembly as the legitimate government of Venezuela. And so we do not intend to change that posture during this administration. And again, the people spoke.
But even though it doesn't change the position of the United States, it has been 4 months since the July elections. So why now? Why? What did you see that made you make this decision, or why it's happening?
Look, it should be up to the people, and it was, and that's what we saw on July 28th. And we were very clear about that. And so, and again, when you win the most votes, that means, in this instance, obviously, that makes him the president-elect. But we've also been very, I think, very consistent on saying what we saw on July 28th, and that the American people, that the people in Venezuela spoke. Again, Michael.
That's great. Just quickly following up on MJ's questions.
Yeah.
Have you?
Which one?
There
were a few of them.
Have you spoken to your named successor? And if so, what advice do you
Oh.
have for her?
Oh, I didn't know that was where you're going. Following up, I didn't think it was that follow-up. Look, I'm not going to speak to every personnel pick, specific personnel pick. I'm going to reiterate a little bit of what I just shared with MJ, which is that, over the past 4 years, we have done the best, I think, to stick to expected norms of the office. We've had over 500 briefings from this podium with gaggles also on Air Force One and abroad. And, we hope that they will continue to answer the questions of the American people. That's what we hope. And I will just add that, I have not spoken to my successor. What I will say is that I certainly wish her luck. And this was a great job. And it is an honor to speak on behalf of the President of the United States. It is a privilege, and it is something that I am very proud to have done for almost 4 years. So I'll leave it there. Go ahead, April.
I have 2 questions. One to follow up on the person who's going to take your place.
Oh, goodness.
When Donald Trump was president the first time, there was a period of time where we had no press briefings. In the space that you're in this moment and have been in for a while, do you believe it's significant in this moment in time for the American public to hear from the spokesperson on a daily basis? Or do you believe that the president can do it himself?
Look, I'm not going to speak how any administration decides to do the business of the American people, how to decide to communicate with the American people. What I can speak to is what we try to do, which is bring back the norms of how this all works, how we communicate with the press. And we've tried to do this in a very respectful way. I've mentioned we've done more than 500 briefings proudly. Some have been tough. Some have been tougher than most, if you will. But it is a privilege to stand at this lectern. It is behind this lectern at this podium. It is a privilege. It is a privilege to speak for this president. It is a privilege to actually talk about what we're doing to you and to the American people. I can't speak to what any administration is going to do. I'm not going to look into the future. What I can say is what we have been committed to: the freedom of the press, respecting the press, having tough back and forths. But this is what democracy is all about.
In Africa.
Yep.
The last Republican president to travel to Africa was George W. Bush. And since Bill Clinton, except for Donald Trump, every president has traveled there. Is there a concern that with all of this, these last 4 years, having the vice president, your secretaries, and now the president go to Africa to highlight the importance of the continent on so many levels, is there a concern that you will lose ground in the next couple of years because Donald Trump didn't go last time and he said some very harsh words about sub-Saharan Africa before?
Again, I have no idea what the next administration is going to do. Really, I mean, I don't know what they're going to execute. I don't know what they're going to do. What I can say is the president's going to Africa because he made a commitment. You saw his commitment to the continent when he had the leaders of the African leaders here about almost 3 years ago now, I believe. Maybe a little bit longer. And he did that because we believe there are shared interests between the continent, the countries, obviously, and the U.S., and wanted to continue to transform those relationships, right? And work on those relationships. And so that's what you're going to see from this president the first week of December when he goes to Angola. I will add that this president believes in respecting people. Again, doesn't matter where you come from. Doesn't matter if you voted for him or not. He believes every American has an opportunity to be uplifted, to have opportunities to have a better life for themselves. That's why he believes in this country, what this country is founded on, what this country is all about, getting opportunities, being able to, to live that American dream, whatever that is, however that is defined for you. And so that is something that this president will always respect, not just as president, but moving forward. Obviously, he did that as vice president, senator. And so that's what I can speak to. And that's what he's going to continue to do. And there's a lot of things that we're going to cover in Angola, right? Whether it's infrastructure, growing economic opportunities, expanding technology. There's a lot to talk about, a lot of shared interest. And so we'll have more to share certainly on his trip to Africa. Okay, Jenny.
Firstly, on MJ's question
MJ,
slash comment,
today.
I was on the South America trip, and I just want to know
Yeah.
if your explanation was that he was engaging with leaders. There was quite a bit of downtime, and of course, opportunities on the tarmac, which he has used before the election. So I don't know that really explains why he didn't.
I appreciate that you don't appreciate my explanation. But what I'm saying to you is that the president is looking forward to engaging with you all in less than 60 days. He's done it extensively. It's not going to stop. And he will do that. He will continue to engage with all of you and take your questions. He's done, I believe, more than 600 back and forths with you all this year alone, done more than 50 interviews. That's not going to stop. It's not. He's going to engage. And I'll just leave it there.
One
Yeah.
actual topic, sorry.
Actual topic?
Well, this one was, I just had to
What does that mean?
I just had to get this one comment. Does the administration have a prevailing theory on how the undersea cables in the Baltic Sea were damaged? And do you think that China may have been responsible?
I'm just not going to get into any type of theories from here. I will let the NSC team respond to that directly. I'm just not going to get into speculation from here. Okay, Nadia.
Thank you, Corinne. On the statement you just mentioned about the ICC issuing an arrest warrant against Mr. Netanyahu, the defense minister, you said that you found the process has troubling errors. What errors do you think it has? And second, sorry, you talked about the partners. You want to discuss with partners the next step on the ICC decision. Few of your closest allies, France, Italy, Netherlands, and Canada so far, said they are abiding by the court decision and they can arrest Netanyahu if he steps on their soil. So did they have a different interpretation of international law than you?
So a couple of things. You asked me a couple of things. So the first thing that I will say is that obviously we reject, and we certainly have different opinions on that. And we're going to let other countries speak for themselves. We're speaking for ourselves. And so we're not going to be executing any arrest warrants. That is not something that we're going to do from here. And I do have some examples on when you asked me about the process and why we think it's essentially a flawed process. And so in contrast to how he has treated, this is the prosecutor, how he's treated others, including Nicolas Maduro and his associates. The prosecutor failed to provide Israel with a meaningful opportunity to engage constructively and to properly consider its domestic processes. This calls into question the credibility of the prosecutor's investigation and the decision today. But we've been very clear, not just today, that we do not believe that the ICC has the jurisdiction here, and so over this matter. And so we've been very clear about that, and that stance has not changed. But I just laid out an example of why we think that what process the ICC did not follow.
On 19 Democratic U.S. senators voted to block sending offensive weapons to Israel. And Senator Bernie Sanders said basically that we cannot criticize human rights violation while the U.S. itself is violating its own laws. So where is he wrong in that?
So look, we strongly oppose this resolution, and we have made our position clear to interested senators. We've been very clear about that. We've been also very clear about this. We are very committed to Israel's security. That has been ironclad, and we believe that these resolutions are counterproductive as we are working to secure a ceasefire in Lebanon and ceasefire and hostage deal in Gaza. And so we have strong reason to believe that terrorist groups like Hamas and Hezbollah want to see Israel in a position of weakness, and we don't want to see that happen. And so, look, we appreciate that the concerns that the senators raised. Obviously, we respect their position. We just do not. We strongly oppose the resolution. Okay.
Thank you so much. Following up on your comments on the change of nuclear posture by Russia, and you said it's another example of irresponsible rhetoric. Is it a way to kind of dismiss what Russia said, to say there is no real reason to be concerned, these are only words?
Say that one more time. There's no.
That there would be no reason, there's no real reason to be concerned, that this is just like Putin.
Oh, you're talking about their nuclear doctrine that they put out.
Doctrine.
Look, here's what we're saying. We haven't seen any indications of Russia preparing to use a nuclear weapon in Ukraine. We just have not seen that. And so this is more of the same, right? More of the irresponsible rhetoric from Russia, which we have seen the past 2 years. We've seen this before. But it doesn't stop what we have been saying, that the escalation is coming from Russia here. They're the ones who are escalating. This is their war. They're the ones who have, went into a sovereign territory, which is Ukraine, and started this war and pushed forward with their aggression. And so this is a war that they can end. They can end it today. And we've been very clear about that. I know I have to wrap it up. Okay.
I wanted to follow up on the Trump transition team not signing the MOUs. Have they provided any reasoning as to why
They can speak for themselves. I'm not going to speak for the Trump transition.
the implications of the delay of the transition?
I'm not going to get into. I'm not going to speculate from here. We are continuing to have our discussion with the Trump transition team. I'm just not going to speculate. All right, go ahead.
Good afternoon. Two topics, one on immigration, one on unions. Immigration. New York Post is reporting that ICE is quietly loosening some of the restrictions on how migrants would have to follow the asylum procedure. Basically, they wouldn't have to do the physical check-ins with Customs Border Protection. The former head of Customs and Border Protection is calling it obstructionist transition. Is there any effort by the current administration to kind of curb any of the immigration overhauls that Trump is likely to do?
I don't have any policies, new policies to speak to at this time. I just don't have anything.
As far as we know.
I don't. I would refer you to DHS for any specifics on that particular question. But if you're asking us if we are doing any policy changes, I don't have anything to announce. I laid out for one of your colleagues what we have been doing, especially since we moved forward with our executive actions since in June, and what we have seen. Encounters have dropped more than 55%, and they're lower than they were even 4 years ago. And so that is what we're going to continue to do. We're going to continue to enforce our laws. That's going to be our focus. But I'm not going to speculate on, again, what the next administration is going to do or not do. Anything specific about loosening of what's happening at the border, I would have to refer you to the Department of Homeland
My second
Security.
question was just on unions.
Yeah.
The president has talked so much about being the most pro-union president ever. This week, the DNC staff union put out a pretty scathing note saying that so many DNC staffers have gotten laid off, no severance. They were shocked. I'm just curious, from an optics perspective, the vice president left town to go to Hawaii on vacation. Does the president think that's appropriate when so many DNC staffers are literally wondering what they're going to do for work?
All right, let's not twist this in so many knots here. First of all, to your first part of your question, it's not the president who called himself the most pro-union president. It's other unions that have called him that, and he is proud to be called the most pro-union president ever. That is something that he was given to him, and he is proud to own that. And it's not because it's a frivolous statement. It is because he has shown, he's not just spoken, but taken action. And has had the back of union members and union workers throughout his presidency. As it relates to the DNC, I would have to refer you to the DNC.
Does it look bad for the vice president to go to Hawaii while DNC staffers are just
The
wondering
vice,
what they're
the
going to do
vice
for work?
president has taken time off to go spend time with her family. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think she deserves some time to be with her family and to have some downtime. She has worked very hard over the last 4 years, and her taking a couple of days to be with her family, good for her. Good for her. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good to welcome back to some of you out there who are on the trail. Good to see you all. Okay, as you just heard from the president, President Biden, he spoke with President-elect Trump to congratulate him on his victory. He also assured him that he would direct his entire administration to work with his team to ensure a peaceful and orderly transition of power. That is what the American people deserve. He also spoke with the vice president to congratulate her on a historic, inspiring campaign. And for some people, this election is a time of victory, and others, it's a time of loss. To state the obvious, Tuesday's night's results were not our team's desired outcome. There's going to be a lot of post-mortem analysis of what happened in the coming days, in the coming weeks, even in the coming months. And so I'm going to leave those questions to the election experts. That is certainly not my role today. But what you heard from President Biden is that the struggle for the soul of America since our very founding crosses generations and is always ongoing. It is still important today. The president and the vice president accept the choice the country has made. And because the president has said this many times, you heard him say this moments ago in the Rose Garden, you can't love your country only when you win, and you can't love your neighbor only when you agree. The president also spoke to the importance of the integrity of the American election system. It's honest, it's fair, and it's transparent. And it can be trusted, whether you win or you lose. The president and vice president are proud to be leaving behind the strongest economy in the world. And the president and the vice president are proud to have changed America for the better. That's going to be their focus in the upcoming remaining days. You heard the president say that we have 74 days left of his administration, and they are going to make every day count on behalf of the American people, regardless of who voted for them. With that, Zeke.
Thanks, Green. First off, do you have an update on when the president-elect will come visit the president here?
So as we said in our statement yesterday after the vice president spoke at Howard University, our teams, the president obviously invited the president-elect to the White House for them to meet. Our teams, their team and our team are working on that, and we're certainly will share once we lock something in the near future.
Second, when the president spoke in the Rose Garden a little bit ago, one thing he did not do was take any accountability for his party's defeat on Tuesday night. Does he feel any sense of responsibility for the outcome? Does he feel he should have done things differently through the course of this campaign?
So there's a lot there, and let me, if you don't mind, give me a second to unpack all of this, because I think it's important for the American people to hear this as well. Look, the president has spoken to this, and I'll say it again here. He was certainly inspired by the campaign that the vice president ran, and when he decided to pass the torch over to the vice president, you saw the party come right behind her, support her, right after he was able to do that. And it's because she was the right person for the job. You heard him say that in 2020, the reason why he selected her as her running mate, because he knew she would be able to do the job on day one. And you heard that obviously once he decided to pass the torch, which he didn't think about, like give any second thought, right? He thought about it and did it. Like, it wasn't something that he gave a second thought to, as I just said. He knew it was the right thing to do. And I would want to say as well is that if you look at the 4 years, almost 3+ years, there are some historic accomplishments that they were able to do together, whether it's beating Big Pharma, now Medicare is able to negotiate, whether it's getting a bipartisan infrastructure law, whether it's the PACT Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure, the Chips and Science Act. Thank you so much. These are things that were able to get us out of the pandemic. And you heard me say at the top that the president is proud to leave the strongest economy for the next person that's coming, for the president-elect. And that's what they're going to inherit. But with all of that said, and this gets to your question, despite all of the accomplishments that we were able to get done, there were global headwinds that because of the COVID-19 pandemic, obviously COVID-19 led to disruptions with the supply chain, and it had a political toll on many incumbents. If you look at what happened in 2024 globally, and that's part of what you saw, right? You saw that there was a political toll on incumbent parties around the world here. Now, I'm going to be very mindful and leave the political analysis to the pundits. They're going to dig in. They're going to look under the hood. They're going to see exactly what happened. But what we saw 2 nights ago was not unusual to what we have seen from the incumbencies around the world on the global stage.
To restate my question, does the president feel any responsibility for the outcome?
The president understands that he's going to respect the will of the people. That's what he understands. He understands that the American people made a decision, and he's going to respect that. He believed he made the right decision. When he stepped aside, decided that he wasn't going to run, he automatically... Guys, here's the thing, and we can't rewrite history. We have to remember what happened in 2022. 2022 is a perfect example, actually, because when we came out of 2022 midterms, we saw a successful midterms for any new administration in over 60 years. And it was because of the president's policies. Let's not forget that all of the accomplishments that the president did, again, I had listed the bipartisan infrastructure legislation, Chips and Science Act, the Inflation Reduction Act. Those are popular with the American people. They are. Those policies were indeed popular. And that's what got us through the 2022 midterm. It was supposed to be a red wave. That didn't happen. And so coming out of that, we did see some historic markers there. And so the president believed that he needed to do. He's always going to put the American people first. When he decided to step down and endorse immediately the vice president, that's what he thought was the right thing to do in that moment, in that time.
One last for me.
Sure,
I'm sure my colleagues have a few to unpack there. But, the president entered office. He said he went around traveling around the world. He's always would recount this anecdote of, I'd say America is back, and then they would say that for how long? The world now has that answer. It was 4 years and 2 days. Does the president feel like he has let down America's allies and partners that now someone with a very different worldview than him will now be in the Oval Office?
So look, I'm not going to get into what the president-elect is going to do, not going to do. I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to say is the president's message is going to continue to be the same. American leadership matters. How we conduct ourselves on the global stage matters. We are indispensable nation on the world stage. That is what the president believes. And that is something that he's heard, to your point, when he was around the world. And he appreciates the cooperation that he's received from our partners and our allies. If you think about Ukraine and how we were able to make NATO stronger and get more than 50 countries behind Ukraine. When you think about what's happening in the Indo-Pacific to the Middle East. And so cannot speak to what the next administration is going to do. I can only speak to what the president was proud that he was able to do over the last 3+ years. And that's going to continue to be our focus. And that's what we believe is the right thing to do on behalf of the American people. Okay, Nancy.
Thank you. Does the president have any regrets about when he chose to leave the race, or any regrets about deciding to run for a second term?
So look, the president is very proud of what he was able to accomplish. He was very proud, and when he made that decision to hand over the torch, pass the torch to the vice president, he believed it was the right decision to make at that time. He believed that she was ready. She was ready to lead on day one, and has been very proud on what he's been able to deliver. And as I was talking to Zeke, or answering Zeke's question moments ago, what we saw 2 nights ago was certainly very much in line to what we've seen in other G7 countries in incumbencies, the role, the toll that the pandemic took, even though we were able to lead in the world when it comes to the economy. We saw what happened in other G7 countries. And so that is what we believe. Look, there's going to be a lot of punditry, a lot of election experts who are going to have their opinions, who are going to have their thoughts. But the president is very, very proud of what he's been able to accomplish, and incredibly impressed by what the vice president was able to do.
Has the president been hearing from foreign leaders about the outcome of this election, and have they expressed any concerns to him? What has his message been to them?
So I don't have any calls to read out about the president speaking to foreign leaders. It's only been two days, as I just mentioned, and so don't have anything for you to read out. But it's very much what I just said moments ago about his message to world leaders about how important it is to have our participation, Americans' leadership on the world stage, and what that means. And we've been able to see that for the last 3+ years, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's the Middle East, whether it's Indo-Pacific. A lot of that, making NATO stronger, was certainly the president's leadership. And that's what other allies and partners, that's what they rely on us on. And so we're going to continue to do that. That's going to be our focus in the next 74 days. I just don't have anything to read out. But our message is America is going to continue to be there. I can't speak to what the next administration is going to do.
And the president said today that he's going to assist with the transition.
Yeah.
Has the Trump transition team been responsive? Have they taken the steps that need to be taken so far in order to ensure an orderly transition?
If you're talking about the MOUs that the transition teams need to sign, as of now, the Trump-Vance transition team has not yet entered the agreements with the White House and the General Services. And our Chief of Staff, Jeff Zients, reached out to the Trump-Vance co-chairs. And so we're going to leave that line of communications open. We're going to be helpful here. We want to have an effective, efficient transition of power. And so we are ready to provide that. As you know, the president invited the president-elect, Donald Trump, to come to the White House. And so once we lock that in, we certainly will share that with all of you. But we're ready. We're ready to assist. We've been trying to be there and be ready to assist in any transition with this, obviously this transition. And so we're going to reach out, have those conversations, and so I'll just leave it there.
Thanks, Karine. Does President Biden believe he could have won if he stayed in this race?
President Biden believes that he made the right decision when he decided to step aside and immediately endorsed the vice president. And you saw the party come behind her, support her, and he believed it was the right thing for the American people. He put himself aside. This was not about him. This is about what was right for the American people. And that's what he believes. He believes it was the right decision to make. And he's very incredibly proud.
And just to follow up on the previous questions, the president said when he stepped aside that his number one priority was making sure that Vice President Harris would succeed him at the White House. That, of course, is not going to happen. So does he have any regrets?
In which way? Any regrets in
how it all played out? Since
I mean, I said this at the top. This was not the outcome that our team had wanted. So are we disappointed? Yes, we are disappointed. It would be false for me to say that we were not. But we also respect the outcome of the election. We respect what the American people voted for, wanted. And so because of that, the president is also going to make sure there is a peaceful transfer of power because that's what the American people deserve. And so, not going to get into analysis here of specifics of what happened, but what we know is the results. And so are we disappointed? Of course. But it is important to make sure that what the American people decided on, what it is that they wanted to see, that we respect that, and we'll do that.
And one of the president's top priorities in the next 70 or so days, when Trump comes in, he couldn't do quite a bit of what President Biden has put in place through executive action.
So a couple of things. Again, I'm not going to get into hypotheticals here about what the president-elect is going to do or not do. I can tell you a couple of our focus, things that we're going to focus on in the upcoming 74 days. And we're going to make sure that we keep the government open. We're going to deliver assistance for communities devastated by Hurricanes Helene and Milton and other recent disasters. We're going to pass the NDAA, that's important. And we're also going to make sure that we confirm well-qualified judicial nominees. That's going to be certainly our focus in the next 74 days. And I'm just not going to get into the next administration, what it is that they're going to do or not do. I can speak to what our focus is going to be. Gotcha.
In 2020, President Trump did not invite then President-elect Biden to come to the White House. President Biden has elected now President-elect Trump to come. I'm curious if that was a hard decision for him, given that he didn't have that offer 4 years ago.
So, look, you mean a hard decision for him to make, President Biden to make right now? I mean, you've covered the president for a long time. I think you covered him when he was vice president. You know Joe Biden, right? You know that this is a person that cares about the American people, that respects the office. And if anything, he has shown that not just the 3+ years, he has shown that as senator, as vice president. And so it is not surprising to me that he would do the right thing on behalf of the American people. This is not about the president-elect, right? This is about the American people. They deserve a peaceful transfer of power. That's what this president understands and wants to make sure that we execute the Biden-Harris administration. And so that is what you saw. That's what you're going to see. That's what you heard from him. You heard that from the vice president as well yesterday when she was at Howard. And that's what you're going to see over the next 74 days. So I think it is in line with who this president is and how he sees the importance of respecting the American people and how it is important to make sure we truly have a peaceful transfer of power. And him being the president, the current president, the onus is on him to make sure that happens.
There's been a lot of criticism in the last couple of days directly addressed at President Biden for some of the questions that have already been asked. Running in the first place or not stepping aside faster. Some of that criticism has also been directed at his team and the advisors around him for advising him to do what he did. Can you address that criticism?
To do what he did, meaning?
Not stepping aside faster and showing what some people say, quoting folks here, arrogance of believing he was the only one who could beat Donald Trump.
I mean, well, you said something at the end that I do want to just kind of reiterate and remind folks, and it was a good reminder to me, which is like, look, this is the president who has been the only person has been able to beat Donald Trump. I mean, that is true. In 2020, he was able to do that. There were more than 20 candidates who tried to beat him, and he was the one that has been able to do that. I talked about what happened in the midterms, how it was historical for a new administration in more than 60 years to have been able to have that type of outcome from the 2022 midterms when everybody said it would be a red wave. What I will also say is that he's incredibly proud of the campaign that this vice president ran, incredibly proud of her. And when he did decide to step aside, he immediately endorsed her, and the party unified behind her. They did.
He said that. My question is just if you can or want to address the criticism that's being directed at him for this loss.
There's going to be a lot of people who are going to say a lot of things. There's going to be election experts who are going to look under the hood in the next couple of days and weeks and months, as I've said already, and they're going to have their opinion on this race. What I can say is that, and this is something the president says all the time, you get knocked down, you get back up. And the president said this moments again, this is a defeat, but we are not defeated. And the president believed he made the right decision on behalf of the American people, on behalf of this country, to step aside. And we saw what happened in 2022 after the midterms. We saw where we were at that time. And this is how elections are. This is. It ebbs and flows. You win, you lose. And this is where we are today. What we're going to focus on is respecting the American people and how we move forward in the next 74 days.
Thank you, Corinne. You talked about the influence that the 2022 midterms had on the president's thinking to decide not to run for re-election. But around that time in 2023, polls showed that roughly 80% of Americans believed at that time that the president was too old to serve another term. Did he believe those voters were wrong?
What he believed is what 14 million voters decided in the primary to make him and the vice president, obviously she was on the ticket, the nominee. That's what happened. 14 million for this current past primary. 14 million Americans decided that. So they made their decision on who they wanted. They did. That was decided. Now, as we know, in July, the president made a decision to step aside, and he immediately, again, decided to, without thought, without second guessing, endorse the vice president. So you had 14 million Americans who made that decision in the primary.
But around that time in 2023, the president's team also very firmly encouraged other rising stars, luminaries in the party, people who had participated in the primaries in the 2020 cycle, to rally behind the president and not to consider their own ambitions. Was that the wrong call?
I'm not going to get into conversations. I'm not going to get into that reporting. It is not unusual for people to rally behind the leader of the party. In this case is in this case is Joe Biden for the Democratic Party. It is not unusual for that to happen. I'm not going to relitigate or get into what was said, not said. I actually don't have any information on that. What I can say is what the president decided to do, what the president believed, and what the president's going to continue to do is put the American people first. That is the most important thing for him.
Does the president have worries about what the country and what this office will look like after January 20th?
Look, the president is going to certainly, again, respect what majority of Americans decided. They decided they wanted Donald Trump to be president, and he's going to respect that. I don't want to get into hypotheticals about what's going to happen in the next administration, not happen in the next administration. We are proud. The president is incredibly proud of what he has been able to do for the American people. And that's going to continue to be his focus. I talked about the legislative focuses that we're going to have in the next 74 days. And he wants to continue to implement those historic legislations, now laws that he was able to get done. And, you know, the next administration is going to inherit a strong economy, which he's very proud about. But I think for now, I'm going to leave it there.
And does the president hope to meet with the president-elect before leaving to go to South America, where he'll meet with world leaders?
What I can tell you, it'll be in the near future. We're going to work that out. Certainly his staff is going to work with the staff of the president-elect to find a time that works for both. I can't say the timing just yet, but certainly you all will know when that occurs. But I can say for sure it will be in the near future. Okay.
Thank you, Karine. So does the president believe that he could have beat Donald Trump?
What the president believes is that he did the right thing for the American people. I'm not going to get into, what could have, would have. He believed he did the right thing. He believed that the vice president ran a great campaign. He's incredibly proud of what she's been able to do and how she was able to unify the party and how she stepped up and was able to get running with a impressive campaign. And so that's what he believed. He thought it was the right thing to do. And here's the thing, the party unified behind her. And I think that's what is important. He believed he did the right thing.
So Republicans have threatened to repeal the Inflation Reduction Act. Does the White House have any plans to take any actions to safeguard some of the measures, such as clean energy investments, for instance?
So a couple of things. I do want to talk about the Inflation Reduction Act. That is a popular piece of legislation, obviously, that became law. That is, when you think about climate change, the most comprehensive law to be passed to deal with climate change. I talked about beating Big Pharma. When you think about Medicare now being able to negotiate, and not only that, you're obviously to negotiate to lower cost. I mean, there is so much that comes out of the Inflation Reduction Act. Only Democrats voted for it. You have heard us warn about Congress trying to repeal that, and it is popular. We saw what happened when they tried to repeal the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, which became popular and helped tens of millions of people get health care. And so that should be a warning for them. That should be a warning for them, not to go after something that actually helps the American people, that actually delivers on key priorities, and that is actually popular. So I'll leave it there. Okay, John.
Thanks, Karine. One of the issues debated, discussed quite a bit during the course of the campaign was the issue of reproductive rights. Is the White House president concerned that with a Republican in the White House, Republicans controlling the Senate, a super conservative majority on the Supreme Court, at the very least, we don't know what's going to happen in the House, that reproductive freedoms for women will be rolled back?
I mean, that is something that we have said consistently that we are concerned about. I believe 3 national bans on abortion were introduced in Congress. This is something that Republican elected officials continue to go after, the rights for women to make decisions on their own body. Very difficult decision, a decision that should be kept between a woman, her family, and her doctor. And so, it is incredibly concerning. And we're talking about women across the country whose health could be at risk. And so what I can say is the president and the vice president is going to continue to stand with majority of Americans on calling on Congress to restore the protections of Roe v. Wade. That's what we want to see. Are we concerned? Yes, we're concerned. Nothing changes about our concern about that post-election. And Republicans in Congress have made themselves very, very clear. And so we're going to do everything that we can when we have taken steps to protect women and this decision, important critical decisions that they have to make. And so that will certainly continue.
You said the vice president ran a great campaign, and yet she underperformed in every state compared with President Biden when he ran in 2020. Why do you suppose that was?
I'm not going to do punditry from here. That is not something that I'm going to do. I'm not going to dive into the data. I'm not going to do that. There's going to be plenty of time for election experts to look under the hood, to tinker around in it, figure out what happened. I'll leave that to them to deal with. But I would say she ran an impressive campaign. Some of you reported that. What she was able to do, it was impressive. How the amount of money she was able to raise, how she was able to put together a campaign around her, right? A campaign that obviously the president built and was happy to hand that over to her. And she stepped up to the moment. Now there's going to be a lot that's going to be discussed about what happened, the data, exactly what occurred. And so I'm going to leave that to them. But what I will say, and I think this is just a data point that I've been talking about what we've seen in G7 countries, what we've seen with incumbencies after the pandemic, because what the disruptions that the pandemic caused, even though we did what we did everything that we could to have policies to get us out of the pandemic and leading the world on the economic front, there were political toll, right? The pandemic led to some political tolls for incumbencies. That's just a data point that I'm sharing with all of you that has been consistent to what we've seen with G7 countries. And so I'll just leave it there. Go ahead, Karen.
Thanks, Kareem. We heard the president say recently in the summer that the former President Trump's vision for America is dark and that it's not who we are. But given the results on Tuesday night, does he think he misjudged where the country is right now?
Look, the country spoke. They did. Majority of the country spoke. They were very clear on where they wanted to see the direction of this country. And we're going to respect that. We're going to respect that. But to your question about what the president said, the president always believes it is important to be honest. He sees it as an obligation to be honest to the American people. And that's what you heard from the president that said there. But again, American people made a decision. We're going to respect that. We're going to have a peaceful transfer of power. That is something the president is going to lead, right? He's going to lead by example. That's what you're going to continue to see in the next 74 days.
Thanks, Corinne. Picking up on that just a little bit, earlier you said that the White House's view when it came to reproductive rights did not change from pre and post-election. The president repeatedly referred to Donald Trump as a threat to democracy over and over again. And this morning, though, he said we're all going to be okay. So was that just political rhetoric?
I mean, if you know the president, you know that him saying we're all going to be okay, he's an optimist, right? He believes when you get knocked down, you get back up. We lost, but we're not defeated, right? We suffered a defeat, but we're not defeated. And that is the president's optimistic nature. And it's very similar to the question that I just got from Karen. The president believes, as you asked me about the threat to democracy, believes in being an obligation to be honest to the American people. And we cannot forget, it wasn't just really quickly, it wasn't just the president who was saying this, right? I mean, you had the former president, now the president-elect, talked about an enemy within, right? He talked about mistreating Americans who disagree with him, about terminating the Constitution. We heard from his former chief of staff, John Kelly, and let's not forget the former defense secretary, Mark Esper. We heard from them and what they had to say. So we weren't the only ones saying that. And the president does believe that he needs to be honest, has an obligation to be honest to the American people. Now we're in a situation where the American people have spoken, and we're going to respect the outcome of the election 2 days ago, because we have to respect our election system. It's important to do that. And at the same time, he's still a leader. He wants to make sure that he shows optimism, right? He wants to make sure that people understand that there is a tomorrow, right? There is going to be another opportunity to have your voices heard. And so that is very much quintessential Joe Biden, I think, if you have followed him and really reported on him for the past several years.
To be clear, do you still believe that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy?
I think that the president was very clear what he stated, and it was very honest. And what we are trying to do, and I get your question, what we are trying to do is respect what the American people decided. We're not trying to cause any divisions here. We're trying to be very respectful of what the American people, but again, when he spoke, He wanted to be honest with the American people and shared what he believed. And it wasn't just him. But right now, we want to move forward. We want to make sure there's a peaceful transfer of power. That's what the American people deserve.
On another topic, do the election results ramp up the urgency to get more aid to Ukraine?
So look, I think in September, the president talked about surging aid to Ukraine, and we've been hearing us to kind of announce aid to Ukraine over the past several weeks, if not months, and so that's not going to change. We're going to surge and get that out there to Ukraine. We understand how important it is to make sure they have what they need, and so. That hasn't changed. That is no different. And so we're going to surging that aid to Ukraine. We're going to continue to make sure that they have the strongest, everything that they need on the battlefield to push back against Russia's aggression. So that certainly doesn't change. And we have taken action to strengthen Ukraine's air defenses and enhance their battlefield capabilities. And so we are committed. We continue to be committed. But we've been surging that aid for some time. Like I said, when the president made an announcement back on September 26th. And so that's going to continue for sure.
And one last one, if
Sure.
I may.
Yeah.
Senator Bernie Sanders, he says that he has suggested that party leadership abandon the working class. What's the White House response?
I mean, look, obviously we respect Senator Sanders. He's been a partner with us in many of the important historic pieces of legislation that we were able to get passed. Certainly the senator has been a partner with us. Here's what I will say to that is the president has been called the most pro-union president when it comes to working class, right? Pro-union, if you think about unions, we're talking about the working class, right? And he's done everything that he could to make sure that we created jobs where you don't need a college degree, right? Think about the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. You think about the Chips and Science Act. Those legislation created jobs, are going to create thousands of jobs where you literally could get a six-figure salary a year and not have to have a college education. And the president created 16 million jobs in the past more than 3+ years. And it is because wages went up, right? Unemployment has gone down. And he believes everybody deserves a shot. You hear him say that. Everybody deserves a shot. And building an economy from the bottom up, making sure that we are continuing to grow the middle class. I think you see that in his policies. And so, respectfully disagree with the senator. And I think you can talk to unions. You could see the jobs that we've been able to create to disprove that. And this is a president that cares certainly about the people who do get forgotten, the people who are not able to make ends meet. He understands what it's like to sit around a kitchen table trying to figure out how you're going to pay for a medical bill, how are you going to pay for your kids' school, how are you going to pay for groceries. And so this is the vice president. Go ahead.
President-elect Trump has heard from a number of world leaders since the election: Xi, Macron, Zelensky, Netanyahu. What is the level of concern that Trump may try to conduct foreign policy in this transition period and get in the way of some of the president's foreign policy priorities?
I mean, look, it's not unusual, right, for a president-elect to hear for world leaders, especially after an election win. I don't have anything beyond that. I'm not going to speculate beyond that, and so I'm just gonna leave it there.
And does the president see this election as a setback to some of the efforts he's been making to try to get the hostages released, to try to bring peace to Gaza?
So look, since you mentioned Gaza, we're going to continue to work to get to advance diplomatic efforts, obviously to end the war in Gaza and secure the release of all the hostages. That's what we're going to continue to do, and as well as our efforts to get to a resolution in Lebanon that ensures citizens on both sides of the blue line can safely return home. And so that's going to continue in the next 74 days. That's going to continue to be a focus. And that's going to continue to be a
Does this make
commitment.
it harder though?
It's asking for speculation. I'm not going to speculate. All I can speak to is what we're committed to do. But that doesn't change. That certainly doesn't change. Go ahead, Tam.
Thank you. As you said, the Trump team hasn't yet signed those memorandums of understanding with GSA. Does that in any way impede your ability to help there be a smooth transition? Are there any practical implications in terms of what this White House is able to do?
Okay, a couple of things. I'm glad you asked this. So there are two memoranda of understanding under the President Transition Act. The first one is the MOU that's with the GSA, which offers services like office space, equipment, and supplies. And then the second MOU is with the White House, which outlines access to agency employees, facilitates and information. So yesterday, the Chief of Staff here, Jeff Sines, reached out to Trump Vance transition co-chairs, that's Howard Lutnick and also Linda McMahon, to make clear our intention to lead an orderly transition and reiterate the role the agreements play in initiating transition activities. Zients, Jeff acknowledged the public comments in mid-October by co-chairs that they intend to execute on the MOUs, which both parties in the past transition have agreed to. So he stressed that the White House and the administration, we're ready to assist. They said that they were going to, and so we'll leave that to them.
What happens if they don't get signed?
I'm not going to get into hypotheticals from here.
Anything now?
Look, we're here to assist. We want to have a peaceful transition of power. We want to make sure they have what they need. I laid out, there was a reason I wanted to lay out the two MOUs for folks to understand. And look, they said they have an intent to do so. We're going to leave it to them. That is really a question for them to answer. We are ready. We are prepared. We want this to work. And so we stand by that.
And we heard from the president today. However, he did not take questions. We're hearing from you. We would like to hear from the president. It's traditional for the president to come out. It would be much easier to ask him, for instance, how he feels about the election. Sure. Are you going to make that happen?
He will be looking forward to talking to all of you soon. And when that happens, we will let you know. You're talking about like a actual press conference?
Press conference.
Okay, we have 74 days. Go ahead, Dan.
Thanks, Karine. Does President Biden... does President Biden fear for Ukraine's future after Donald Trump's victory, given that he's, talks about cutting aid, about pushing through a peace deal?
Look, I've been pretty consistent the past couple of questions. I don't want to speculate what the administration is going to do or not do. I'm going to focus on today. I'm going to focus on the next 74 days. That's what I can speak to. As you've seen, this president, our allies and partners have rallied behind Ukraine, stood up to Putin's brutal invasion of Ukraine, building a coalition of more than 50 countries to make sure Ukraine had what it needed on the battlefield. And we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to surge assistance, support that they need to Ukraine so that they are able to defend their freedom and fight for their independence and protect themselves from Russia's aggression. That is what we're committed to. That's what we're going to continue to do. I'm just not going to stand here and speak to what the administration is going to do or not going to do, the upcoming administration.
I'm going to ask you to speculate one more time about something else.
Sure.
On a related note, Vladimir Putin said today he was ready to talk to Donald Trump. Would that be a good idea?
I'm just not going to speak to that. He's the president-elect. That's what the American people decided. I can speak to what we're going to do the next 74 days, our continued commitment to make sure that Ukraine has what it needs to beat back Putin's aggression. And that's what I'm going to speak to. Okay.
Thanks, Karina. I have two questions on pardons. The first, does the president intend to pardon any administration officials or people that Trump has threatened with any sort of legal actions? He's got 74 days, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I know pardons is going to be a big part of the questions that I get here over the next several weeks. And couple of months that we have. I don't have anything to share or any thought process on pardons. Once we have something to share, we certainly will share that.
Secondly, his son Hunter is also up for being sentenced next month. Does the president have any intention of pardoning him?
We've been asked that question multiple times. Our answer stands, which is no.
You mentioned 2 MOUs.
Yeah.
Can you give us a flavor of what might be subsequent MOUs that might be coming up?
I was talking about the transition and how that there's 2 MOUs that are related to the Transition Act, Transition Presidential Act, and that's what I was speaking to. I don't have anything else beyond that. This is part of the Transition Presidential Act, and that's what I was speaking of. I just wanted to make sure that there was an understanding that there's 2 MOUs. I don't have anything beyond that. Okay.
Is the president still planning to attend APEC and the G20 summits next week? And if so, given there's such little time in office, what does he aim to do there, accomplish?
So look, he is planning to attend both conferences, if you will. He's going to be going to Peru and Brazil to attend those conferences respectfully. We will have more to share. I don't have anything beyond that, but I can confirm that the president will be attending. Okay, Anita in the back.
Thank you. 2 foreign policy questions. First of all, what are your top foreign policy objectives for the next 74 days, especially vis-a-vis the Americans being held in Gaza and in Ukraine? Or what are you doing to work to, if you can't solve these problems in the next 74 days, to handle it in the next administration?
So look, the president's going to continue, as more broadly speaking of, in more general terms, speaking of the president's focus on foreign policy. He's going to continue to push forward with the progress that we've made over the 3+ years. And that's been on an array of important issues. Whether I've been talking about Ukraine, whether it's continuing to strengthen our alliances and partnership, standing with Ukraine, making sure they have what they need on the ground to beat back against Putin's aggression, tackling challenges we face in the range from Indo-Pacific to the Middle East. So that will continue to be the president's focus on foreign policy matters, certainly that are important to the American people. I spoke to Gaza already when I was asked a question about Gaza. We're going to have those diplomatic conversations. We want to make sure that we bring the hostages home. That is all the hostages. That is a focus. And let's not forget Lebanon as well. We want to make sure there's a resolution there. And so that's a lot. That is nothing new to what the president has been focused on for the past several months or past 3+ years. And so we're going to continue to do that.
Cool with the next administration maybe finalizing the deal and getting the credit for that if you line it up?
I mean, look, this is about what's right for the American people. This is right. I mean, I just said moments ago, the president is very proud to be handing over the strongest economy. The next administration is going to inherit a strong economy. And the president's proud about that. He's proud that he's been able to do the work so that the next administration will inherit that. And so, look, we're going to focus on what we can do right now in the next 74 days. And everything that this president does, every focus that he has is on the American people. And that's what we're going to continue to do.
APEC at the G20, what is the president's message to China and the other 19 members of the G20, especially vis-a-vis climate change, which, President Trump has a very different.
Yeah, and we'll have more to share on what the goals and what the message is going to be when the president travels next week. I was able to confirm that he'll be attending those 2 conferences. We'll have more to share for you all, but I think we've been very clear on our messaging when it comes to the Indo-Pacific, when it comes to China. I think we've been very clear on that, but we will certainly have more to share. Go ahead, Jerry.
Considering the outcome of the election, what is the White House's message to Black and Brown communities, LGBTQ Americans who are fearful of the vulnerabilities of a Trump administration, given some policy proposals like eliminating DEI mechanisms, banning LGBTQ, bans in healthcare and in classrooms? And how is the president thinking about ways he can advance or preserve civil rights, his agenda in these final days?
So look, the president and the vice president, as you know, have put civil rights as one of the top issues in their administration. And we have taken action to make sure that people who are vulnerable and did not have protections or needed additional protections. We made sure that we did everything that we can with this administration so that people in those vulnerable communities feel protected. And that's something that the president and the vice president believe in, are very proud of, and continue to do. And when it comes to this election, I said this, we did not have the desired outcome. There are some people who are celebrating and some people who are heartbroken by this moment. And we understand that. But the reality is majority of the American people voted. And so we're going to respect that. I don't have any new policies to speak to. But for those who are hurting, we see you, we hear you, we understand what you're going through. But don't have anything else to speak to.
One more question. There are reports of racist text messages targeting Black Americans being sent across the country, particularly on college campuses, Ohio State, University of Alabama, Clemson University. These messages are claiming to be from Trump supporters, indicating that recipients have been selected to, quote, pick cotton on plantations. These messages were quickly condemned by campus and civil rights leaders. But is the White House tracking this, and what concern does the White House have about the outcome of the election leading to heightened hate speech?
Well, look, I have not spoken to the team here about that reporting. It does sound concerning, obviously. I would have to go back and get a better sense of what is indeed happening and what, the facts are. Just going to the broader question, it is important for every community to feel safe, to feel protected. That is something that this president has done and the vice president has done over the 3.5 years. We understand how vulnerable communities can feel, and it is important that we do that. And I think that's why in the next 74 days, the president wants to lead by example. That's why we keep talking about a peaceful transfer of power. That's why we keep talking about the importance of the election system and the results, because he believes it's important to, again, lead by example as president of the United States. And that's what we're going to do here. Again, I can't speak to the reportings directly. If it indeed is what's happening, it is concerning. And so let me talk to the team and get you a fuller answer. Okay, go ahead.
What will Kamala focus on in next 74 days? And will she spoke with J.D. Vance?
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, you're talking about the vice president? Okay. So I think I talked about what the administration, which obviously includes the vice president, what we're going to focus on the next 74 days. I will have more to share with you about a potential meeting with the vice president and the incoming vice president, J.D. Vance. Don't have anything to share with you at this time. Go ahead, Brian, in the back.
Thanks a lot. Donald Trump had classified documents at Mar-a-Lago that he did not secure. Does the president have concerns about classified information being given to Donald Trump in the next 74 days as part of the transition, that Donald Trump would not take steps to protect that?
Look, I'm going to leave it to ODNI to speak to whatever information, classified information. I'm not going to get into speculation from here, and just leave it there for now. Oh, yeah, sure.
President Biden invites Trump to the White House. Will he also invite the other living presidents? Will he invite Barack Obama, George W. Bush, and Bill Clinton to be there as well?
I don't have anything beyond President Biden inviting the president-elect when they spoke recently. I don't have anything more. Obviously, when that meeting lands in the very near future, we will share that. The teams are working on it. I just don't have anything beyond the president inviting the president-elect. Okay, Phil.
Thank you. First, a quick follow-up. Does the president still stand by his description of the former president, now president-elect, as an existential threat to democracy?
I don't have anything else to share beyond what I said. The president believes, when he said it at the time, he believes he had an obligation to be honest with the American people. I laid out what people who, former staffers of the former president said. We're talking about John Kelly, former chief of staff. We're talking about the former defense secretary. They were very clear. And we also heard words that the president-elect said, enemy within, going after people who disagree with him. And so the president is always, always going to be very honest with the American people. I don't have anything else to share beyond that. Look, we are being very clear here, right? The outcome was not what we wanted. And the American people have made a decision, and we want to respect the decision that the American people have made. And we are going to make sure that the American people get what they deserve, which is a peaceful transfer of power. And we're going to continue to focus on issues that matter. We believe that matter to the American people in the next 74 days.
So it sounds like his assessment hasn't changed.
He was being honest. He has an obligation, and he was being honest with the American people, and he will continue to do so.
A question about the peaceful transition.
Sure.
What is President Biden's message to career civil servants who will carry over into the next administration? Does President Biden believe that they should be fully cooperative as the next president seeks to put his agenda into action?
Fully cooperative.
Not slow things down.
Oh, no,
Republicans are
Yeah, I
voice
mean,
a lot
look,
of
we're saying that we want a peaceful transition. We want an effective, efficient transition. That's what we're saying, and that's in the president's administration. Career, political. We want to make sure that that transition happens in an orderly way, and we're not looking to slow down anything. We want it to happen. That's what the American people deserve. This is not political here, folks. This is not about politics. This is about the right thing to do for the American people. They've made a decision, and we're respecting that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I don't know how much gets here.
Are members of the Trump team traveling with the president and government officials to Lima to the APEC summit?
I'm sorry. What's the?
Are members of the Trump team traveling, or are they going to be in Lima?
You're going to have to ask the Trump team. I can only speak for the president. Yeah. Okay, Jackie.
Thank you, Greg. Just to follow up on the pardon question, is a commutation also still off the table?
For who are you talking about? Oh, no. I mean, we're not. That's not what we're going to do.
So you had said on Air Force One that the president would not consider a commutation of his sentence.
Yeah,
You're saying that still stands? Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then I heard you earlier in the briefing talking about the pandemic's role in the outcome of this election. And it sounds like that is being looked at internally as potentially one of the causes of this outcome. But Richie Torres, the congressman, tweeted, Donald Trump is no greater friend than the far left, which has managed to alienate historic numbers of Latinos, Blacks, Asians, and Jews from the Democratic Party with absurdities like defund the police or from the river to the sea or Latinx. Is the administration, campaign, the Democratic Party looking at the pandemic as the cause rather than, is that easier than looking in the mirror?
Let's step back here. I think I've been, and the president and the vice president has been pretty clear in understanding that the American people have spoken and respecting that. I think we have tried to be incredibly respectful of what happened 2 nights ago. And we're going to continue to do that. And I'm not going to speak to every person in the Democratic Party who has an opinion or a thought. I'm just not. It is not something that I'm going to do. I talked about the political toll on incumbent parties around the world as a data point, right? As something that we have seen pretty consistently with G7 allies in this time. And obviously, one of the things that occurred was the pandemic. It did. It caused disruption. It caused the supply chain to be disrupted and and caused the economy to be turned upside down. While we put policies, and we are in fact leading the world on the economy, it doesn't stop the fact that there has been a political toll for incumbents. That is something that I'm telling you as a data point to share, because we know that you guys would have questions. That's a data point that I'm using. And I'm also saying that there's going to be election experts in the next days, weeks, months, who are going to, again, looking under the hood, kick the tires, trying to figure out exactly what happened 2 nights ago. And so they're the pundits. They're going to speak to that. They're the experts. And so we'll have more information as they look at the data. And so we'll leave that to them. And so I'm offering you our perspective, our thoughts, how we're going to move forward the next 74 days. And I think what Americans should be assured of is that this is a president that's going to put the American people first. That's what people can be assured for.
Examination happening at all inside though? Because as Gabe mentioned, this administration message to millions of Americans that they're going to wake up day after the election if Trump won and have their rights stripped away, that democracy would crumble, and the president said today we're going to be okay. So how do you square that?
I can square that. I'm going to square that in a way that hopefully makes sense, because I've been answering this question multiple times. The American people made the decision. There was an election 2 nights ago. There was. And it was a free and fair election. And we respect the election process. We do. And Americans spoke. And so the job of the president is to make sure we respect that. The job of the president is to make sure that we have a peaceful transfer of power. That is what the American people deserve. And that's what we're going to, it's not complicated. It's truly as simple as that. As simple as that. The president called the president-elect, invited him to the White House. You know why? Because that's customary. That is customary. That is what you do. If you respect what the American people decided, that's what you do. And that's what the president's going to make sure that the Trump transition has what it needs, which is being led obviously by our chief of staff here. Why? Because the president wants to lead by example. It's not complicated. It really isn't. And that's important.
Is the message to people who are fearful based on what the messaging was about mistakes?
Well, now you're just twisting everything around, and that's really unfair. No, it is. No, Jackie, it's unfair, because I've been standing here trying to be very respectful to what happened the last 2 nights ago. Being respectful. I've been standing here saying that we respect the decision that the American people made. I've been standing here and saying that the president's going to put the American people first. I've been standing here talking about how the president's going to make sure that they get what they deserve, which is a peaceful transfer of power. I do not appreciate having my words twisted. That is, I am being very clear, very clear about what the president wants to do, and the vice president. We want to make sure that we deliver for the American people. They deserve a peaceful transfer of power, and that's what you're going to see. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good day.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay. So this afternoon, President Biden welcomed the president of Indonesia to the White House. The two leaders commemorated 75 years of diplomatic relations and discussed global challenges, including Gaza and the South China Sea. As the world's second and third largest democracies, the United States and Indonesia share a commitment to addressing evolving challenges and capitalizing on emerging opportunities. The leaders also discussed sustainable approaches to food security, clean energy, democracy and pluralism, regional peace and stability, and people-to-people ties, as well as advancing our cooperation and humanitarian aid and disaster relief. And earlier today, President Biden also welcomed President Herzog of Israel to the Oval Office. You heard from the president himself. His commitment to Israel's security is ironclad, and our two countries share a deep friendship. We will have a readout later today on their meeting. And with that, Will, you want to kick us off?
Thank you. Yeah. I have 2 questions. Will President Biden meet with President Xi during APEC or the G20?
I don't have anything to share with you at this time. We'll certainly will have more to share on the details of his visit into Peru and also Brazil, as you all know, we're leaving on Thursday. We'll have more to share. And as we normally do, we will have press calls for all of you to get some details on the trip, on the one of his final ACONUS trips, as you all know. But I don't have anything to share on a phone call with President Xi or a meeting with President Xi.
On another topic, why does President Biden feel compelled to invite President-elect Trump to the White House and continue a tradition that wasn't followed 4 years ago? Is it possible that the politics in this country have sort of evolved past the norms?
I mean, look, that's an easy question to answer, honestly, when it comes to why President Biden is doing this, because he believes in the norms. He believes in our institution. He believes in a peaceful transfer of power. You heard him speak to this directly just last week when he was in the Rose Garden 2 days after the American people made their decision on this election. And it is important to him. It is important not just because it's important to him, but it's important to the American people. He said the American people deserve this. They deserve a peaceful transfer of power. They deserve a smooth transition. And that's what you're going to see. He reached out to President-elect Trump and asked for a meeting for them to meet in the Oval Office. You're going to see that tomorrow. That is what is the norm. That is what is supposed to happen. And also that's what the American people deserve. Okay, Karen.
Thanks, Karine. 30 days ago, the administration put a timeline on Israel to get more aid into Gaza. Yesterday, Secretary Blinken met with Israel's Minister of Strategic Affairs to talk about the steps that Israel has taken to improve the situation at Gaza. But today, there are multiple international aid agencies that say that Israel has failed to address the concerns and that the situation is even more dire than a month ago. Does the administration think that Israel has taken enough steps, or do you agree with these aid organizations and their assessment?
So a couple of things. Let me just take a look back at the last 30 days. Israel has taken steps to address the measures laid out in that letter from the two Secretaries Blinken and also Austin. And we are in a discussion with the Israelis about both the important steps Israel has taken as a result of the United States intervention, as well as additional steps that need to be taken. So those conversations continue, those discussions continue. And we, the United States, is indeed the largest provider of humanitarian assistance to the Palestinian people. And so we are going to continue to do everything that we can to surge humanitarian assistance in Gaza. We understand how important it is. And in your question, we understand how dire that is. So ultimately, the long-term solution here to alleviate the suffering of the Palestinian people in Gaza is bringing an end to this war. And so we're going to try and work very hard to continuing to achieving certainly that goal. And so that is certainly continuing to be a priority for us as we talk about what's happening in the region.
Is the administration, is the president satisfied with those steps, though, that Israel has taken over these past 30 days? Is it enough?
I did say that they have taken steps, and those discussions continue because we need more. We certainly need more aid to be surged into Gaza. So there's more work to be done, but we have seen certainly some improvement. And again, we are going to do everything that we can. The United States, we are indeed the largest provider of humanitarian aid, humanitarian assistance into Gaza to relieve the pain of the Palestinian people. And what we're seeing, and you're right, it is dire, but those discussions continue, and we're going to be laser focused on
If I
that.
could just do one more on the meeting tomorrow. Can you just tell us what are the top issues that the president is bringing to the agenda tomorrow? How long you anticipate the meeting lasting? Is he having senior staff there? Like, what's this going to look like tomorrow?
So, look, President-elect Trump is coming to the White House because the president invited him as part of this peaceful transfer of power. There's going to be a pool spray at the top in the Oval Office before the meeting commences. And so you all and some of your colleagues will certainly have an opportunity to hear or to see that, to see the two of them sitting down together. I don't have anything beyond that. I don't have an agenda to share. It's, we try to keep these, certainly these types of conversations private. And just don't have anything beyond that to share. This is part of the process. When we talk about peaceful transfer of power, this is what you're seeing. It's kind of the beginning of that. When you see the current president and the president who's coming in, sitting down in the Oval Office and having a discussion. We don't have any details to share at this time.
Thanks, Green. Can you confirm whether or not Mrs. Trump has accepted Dr. Biden's invitation to come to the White House as well?
Don't have any updates, or we don't have any scheduling updates to give. I would certainly reach out to the Trump transition team to get more clarity on that question. I just don't have anything to share at this time.
And can you say whether President Biden is pleased with how the transition is going so far?
I mean, look, what the president is committed to doing is making sure that this transition is effective, efficient, and he's doing that because it is the norm, yes, but also the right thing to do for the American people. That's what they deserve. We're going to have a meeting tomorrow. They're going to have a meeting tomorrow, and certainly that will continue. As you know, Chief of Staff Jeff Zients has been pretty open and available to the Trump transition team, and will continue to do so. We want this to go well. We want this to be a process that gets the job done, if you will. And so, look, it's certainly, we're going to do everything that we can. The president trusts his team to get that done and do it the best way possible. And that is our commitment. That's what I can speak to.
Just lastly, are there areas that this White House or President Biden's administration are trying to shore up or protect from a Trump administration, perhaps trying to push back or pull back on some of the legislative and other executive order and other gains that the president is proud of?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. Certainly don't have any policy announcements or anything like that to speak to. What I can say more broadly, if you will, is say that, look, more broadly, the president's legislation is helping all Americans across the country. And what we would say is that we saw what happened when Republicans in Congress tried to repeal, for example, the ACA, Affordable Care Act. They tried to do it more than 50 times. It was something that they were so laser focused on. And meanwhile, the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, was incredibly popular, became more and more popular. And under this administration, we expanded the Affordable Care Act so that millions more Americans could get that benefit, get that care that they so very much needed. And we can't forget that if you think about beating Big Pharma, if you think about lowering costs, if you think about CHIPS and Science Acts, those policies are overwhelmingly popular. And so I think if they were to try to do that, Republicans in Congress were trying to do that in the next Congress, the country would speak out. They would make themselves speak out really loud and clear about taking away legislation, obviously, that are now laws that are helping the American people, whether it's creating good paying jobs, whether it is attacking climate change in the way that is going to be effective, the most progressive climate change legislation that the president was able to get done, making sure that Medicare is able to negotiate to lower costs. All these things matter to the American people, are incredibly popular. And they've tried to repeal that and go after that. I think the American people will have something to say about it.
Yeah, that's great. Just one more on tomorrow. Do you know if President Biden has a message that he would like to convey either to the former president or the American people, just given the unique setting we're talking about? And just in terms of the choreography tomorrow, do you know if the former president will go to the sticks? Will he be free to roam?
So I would leave it to free to roam. I would leave it certainly to Trump's transition on whatever engagement that he'll have with all of you. That's certainly up to him. And I do appreciate the question because he has a very clear message to the American people, and not to sound like a broken record, but this is indeed true. He wants to show the American people that the system works, right? To trust on the institution, to trust that the norms do matter here, to trust that he is showing by leadership what a transition, a peaceful transition looks like. Hopefully an efficient, effective transition looks like, a smooth transition looks like. And that is the message. When you all come in, when the pool comes in tomorrow and does a pool spray, that's what they're going to see, right? They're going to see these two, one president-elect and the current president sitting down and doing what is the norm. And that, if you know Joe Biden, right, if you know Joe Biden from following him in the Senate and as vice president, certainly the last almost 4 years, he cares about that. He cares about our democracy. And that's the message that he hopes resonates with the American people tomorrow.
And separately, the families of the American hostages are in town. Should they, at this point, have any reason to hope that their loved ones will be released before the president's term is up?
I mean, the president is committed to continuing to do the work to get families home, to get all of the, families, the hostages home, including American hostages, obviously, all of the hostages. And that is his commitment to the families. As you just stated, the families are here. They met with National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan this afternoon. They've had regular engagement in meetings with Jake Sullivan, but also many other members of the team here. And, we're going to continue to do the work to get the deal done. And if anything, there's more of an imperative to get that done, right? We want to make sure that we get them, get their loved ones home. And so that is our commitment. It doesn't change at all. If we are continuing to be eager to get that done and working around the clock as we have for this past more than a year now, more than 400 days. And so it doesn't stop our commitment. It doesn't stop us from trying to get that done.
You said he's committed to doing the work and
Continuing to do the work,
and the White House is working around the clock. What does doing the work right now look like? What is working around the clock?
Trying to find ways that we can get to a deal, right? As you know, Qatar is very much involved. Egypt is very much involved. They're doing their part of the negotiations, and we want to pursue. And we believe there's a number of ways, numbers of initiatives to secure that hostage deal, to release those hostages, and we're going to work through it. We're going to continue to do that work. And that's what we can say is our commitment, and will continue, has been our commitment, and continue to do so.
Thanks, Corinne. I know you don't want to get too far ahead of the conversation, but I did want to point to something that Jake Sullivan said over the weekend. He said that President Biden would have the opportunity over the next 70 days to make the case to Congress and the incoming administration that the United States should not walk away from Ukraine. So is foreign policy going to be on the agenda for tomorrow? Ukraine specifically, Israel's war with Hamas?
I'm not going to get into the details of what's going to be discussed tomorrow. That's not something I'm going to get into here. But look, you heard from the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, our commitment to Ukraine. I mean, that is something that we have showed for almost 3 years since Russia's aggression into Ukraine. And you saw the president's leadership, global leadership on this. When you think about making NATO stronger, when you think about the partners and the alliances that he's been able to bring together, more than 50 countries have gotten behind Ukraine. And continuing, we talked about this on September 29th when we talked about surging aid into security assistance, aid into for Ukraine so that they are able to beat back Russia's aggression. So you've seen our commitment. We've been very clear. We don't even need to say that privately because we've been very public about that. And getting to, just went back and forth about making sure that we get a hostage deal. And so that we can get hostages home, all hostages home who've been held by Hamas. And let's not forget Lebanon. We want to make sure that we get to a deal there too, and we're negotiating there. Those negotiations continue. And so our commitment has been very clear, and our global leadership, this president's global leadership, has also been very, very, very prominent, if you will, on the global stage.
And does the White House have any concerns about the number of foreign leaders who have been in conversation with the incoming president, even as President Biden heads to the G20 in the next few days, as well as Lima?
So here's the thing. He's the president-elect. Every president-elect receives calls from world leaders, takes calls from world leaders, has calls from world leaders. It is not unusual. I don't have a comment beyond that. Any specifics or details, that's something for the Trump transition to speak to.
Just briefly, a follow-up. Is the president, is he receptive of what the Israelis are doing to push humanitarian aid, or is he happy with what they're doing now?
I mean, I don't have a different answer for you to what I was asked by Karen. We are having those discussions. We've seen some improvement over the last 30 days. We want to see more because there is a dire situation happening in Gaza. Also, the U.S. has been leading in getting humanitarian aid. And so those discussions continue. We want to see more, and we're going to continue to have those discussions.
And just briefly on Haiti, with the situation there, do you have any statement or reaction to what's going on there with the violence and those being targeted?
Yeah, so look, we're certainly, as it relates to the commercial flight, very recently, the gun shots that were reported. So we're certainly concerned about the increase of violence in Haiti. And as it relates to commercial flights and what occurred there, the airport, Toussaint Louverture Airport, operations are temporarily closed until November 18th. And so certainly their airlines could speak more to that. But we are definitely certainly concerned by the increase of violence, and we'll continue to work with, as you know, there's a new prime minister that was named and recognized by the TPC, the Transitional Presidential Council. And so so we're going to continue to work with them, and hopefully we can get to a better place. Okay.
Thank you, Corinne. Did President Biden invite Vice President Harris to this meeting with Donald Trump tomorrow?
This is a meeting with the president and the president-elect. This is the norm, that the incoming president and the current president sit down in the Oval Office and have a discussion. And that's what you're going to see tomorrow, is the norm, what we normally would see when we are talking about a peaceful transition of power.
President Biden says that he's not going to pardon his son, Hunter. Is he going to ask Donald Trump to do that?
I don't have anything else to share about that. I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole on this. I've been very clear. The president's been very clear when we've been asked this question.
And we know that at some point during the last Trump transition, then President Obama warned Trump that the biggest threat to the U.S. at the time was North Korea. Is President Biden going to run through what he sees the biggest threats to the country are with Donald Trump?
I am not going to get into a specific agenda of what they're going to discuss. And this is very much to the question that I got from MJ. What does the president what's the message he wants to send tomorrow? And it is to the American people. The importance of keeping the norms, the importance of having a transition that is going to be efficient. This is what the American people deserve. And that's the message. And I think when you all come into the Oval Office tomorrow, you do the pool spray, you capture that moment. That is an important message to send to the American people. That's what the president cares about. I'm not going to get into details about any conversation or agenda.
And we know that today, a week after the election, President Biden and Vice President Harris had a private lunch.